Hi. So, in this section, I'll be reading for the final is my prologue for the story titled Broken Glass. The idea centers around the premise that certain people in this particular city gain the ability to manipulate one of 7 elements, and they can also see other people interacting with like the environment of these elements. This condition visually affects the eyes and gives it so that their eyes are slightly different color than their natural eye color. This is kind of a secret society thing because normal people are blind to the powers and their brains kind of like autocorrect and rationalize when someone's trying to use their powers. The final thing before I begin is that the ones using the power are very cutthroat and they're constantly fighting and battling and trying to kill each other in the city. So they're trying to all get like any advantage they can. So without further ado, I'll get right into the prologue here. Cadian woke up to a draft bristling against his skin. It startled him, how that was the only thing he could discern from his surroundings. He felt tight, like he was coiled in place and was surrounded by only an unyielding darkness. He tried to blink away that darkness, but realized that his eyes weren't adjusting to the dark. He couldn't tell where he was or how big the space could be, and uneasiness began to lurch in his stomach. He attempted to scream, but only tasted his own spit with the wet cloth that was pushed up to his mouth. It made it hard to breathe, and as he made a sharp inhale, the darkness shrank around him more. Panic started to rush in his mind as he then tried to move, but could only feel the burning and rough serration of ropes binding his hands and feet in place. Cadian tried to steady his breathing and remember what happened the night before. He went out with Mason and Scott, and they had hit up Smokey's bar like they normally do. He only had 2 mojitos and didn't even remember feeling remotely buzzed by the end of the night. But he didn't remember making it home. Did someone kidnap him? For what reason? He couldn't think of anyone he owed money to, or any connections for him to be used as a hostage. His thoughts were cut off by the sound of echoing metal reverberating louder. He turned towards the noise and began to focus on the rhythm of sound. As the tingling of the metal rattled in his head, he realized that they must be footsteps getting closer. He decided to go slack and tried to remain as still as possible, trying to appear still knocked out. A moment later, the sound halted. Cadian tensed in anticipation for a door to slam open or some kind of contact. But everything was still. Cadian was sure that the beating of his heart was loud enough to give him away, but he tried to remain motionless. After a brief pause, a foreign and sourceless voice broke the silence. The sounds meant nothing to him. It seemed like they were supposed to be words, but it came across as just strange sounds garbled together. At this point, Cadian's body started to feel numb as his body strained to keep his stillness in his awkward constriction. He couldn't fight off the urge to adjust his leg, even with the risk of not knowing who was watching. He tried to shift subtly, but the moment he did, a sudden hush of the voices around him told him that they knew he was awake. After a moment, a voice in front of him spoke in words that he could understand clearly. "Yeah, I think he woke up on his own." The voice was cheery, but deep and thick with a light accent. "Aight, let me check, just in case he's a regular guy." The second voice answered in a scratchy rasp. Immediately, Cadian felt someone push down on his head, and after some fumbling, removed the blindfold that was wrapped around it. His surroundings came into view through squinted eyes. A sudden rush of bright color compared to the compressing darkness was too overwhelming for his senses. Once everything started to come into focus, he could see the room where he was being kept. He was in what appeared to be a storage room, a cluttered mess of shelves with stacked goods and miscellaneous tools, cleaning supplies, and boxes. The room had metal walls with no windows, and from where he was sitting, he couldn't tell where the door was. He noted that he was, in fact, tied and gagged to a chair in the center of the room. Above him was a globule of light shining impossibly bright, too bright to be simply a light bulb, and burning with the intensity of the sun. In the room, it was just himself and the two men who had spoken earlier. He saw the thick-voiced man standing in front of him. It was hard to tell from being confined to the chair, but he carried himself tall and imposing. A full black beard was shaved close to his olive skin. The second kidnapper had slithered next to him and grabbed Cadian's head to steady it. He forcefully opened his eye to look intensely at it. Cadian strained to get away, jerking at the ropes and pulling away from the man. He was still unable to move freely, but he tried to thrash and shout with all his energy. A choking scream muffled by cloth was all he could manage. The raspy-voiced man backed up quickly, raising his hands in defense. He was notably lankier than the other man and had a casual swagger when he moved. All right, calm down. I'm not gonna hurt ya." The rasp from the lanky man was rough and coarse, like branches scraping a car roof. He smiled and turned his attention to the other kidnapper. "His eyes look good. So we're good to do it just here. What do you think he's got?" "Well, he's still in the chair, so we can rule out ours. Unless he just doesn't know." The lanky man thought for a moment. "I can't imagine him not knowing at this point. But everyone's ascension's different, I suppose. Better to be careful still." The light source in the center of the room began to dim to nothing, then grow in intensity, causing the shadows across the room to expand and shrink like a warning light. The two men looked at each other in a moment of concern. Then the lanky man spoke up. Guess she's back sooner than expected." The thick-voiced man turned towards the closest wall. I'll go get her." The lanky man gave a nod. I'll keep watch." During one of the dimming flashes, the man seemed to just disappear from the room. Cadian took the chance to look behind him. He didn't see anywhere the man could have gone. There was no door, no window, no exit. He closed his eyes for a moment and huffed through his nose. "They really want to keep me from running if I could. Looks like there won't be an easy escape even if I could get out." He was trying to remain calm, but none of this made any sense to him. The lights continued to blink in and out in a dizzying spin, which made him unsure of what in the room was even real. The lanky man came over and nudged Cadian with his foot. "He'll be just a moment. It'll be over before you know it." He went back over to lean on the wall and continued. "They made a real big fuss about you up top, so you better be worth the trouble." Cadian tried to protest, but his screams only came out as muffled breaths. He should have been more afraid, but he felt more strongly that they had nabbed him by mistake. He was sure that they must have the wrong person and that everything would have been cleared up once he was able to speak. He didn't think of any good reason someone would try to kidnap him. After a moment of the light continuing to convulse, it had begun to dim until the light blinked out and left the room in darkness once more. Just as when Cadian's eyes were beginning to adjust to the dark, the sudden emergence of light and two silhouettes came out of the darkness, nearly blinding him again. The first one was the burly man he saw before. The second was a woman who looked like she was radiating light. After a moment, the light dulled, and he could see the new figure clearly. She was about a head shorter than the lanky man, and had blonde hair cut chin length that had framed her intense glare that was scanning the room. Cadian noticed that her eyes were dual-colored, just like his. Hers were blue with a ring of brown around her iris. She took in the situation only a moment before shooting a targeted glance at the two men who now stood aloof. All right. I'll end my section there. Now, writing this was interesting because I start my main story from the perspective of my mentor character who is tracking down Cadian, and trying to recruit him only to find out that he's being used as bait with these people so that they can jump him. I wanted to set up the history of how Cadian got involved with these people, and in my story I'm going to have flashback moments to his time with them that isn't really shown in the prologue. I kept imagining how these people would use their powers to get their goals, and just kept picturing Cadian waking up in a metal room that didn't have any entrances or exits. Because these two men have only a brief role, I don't really have names for them, which led to an interesting challenge of only referring to each of them through... in my initial writing, I had used some basic vocal identifier, just referring to them through how their voices sounded the whole time. But it got kind of confusing, so in my revisions, I tried to expand upon it, where as he got his vision, he was able to make a more concrete identification for these guys. In my actual dialogue, I wanted to give one of them a distinct dialect to set his speaking patterns apart from the other characters. I'm still working on getting better at imagery of what specific characters would notice and how they would picture certain things, and also just giving the audience a clear idea of what's going on. It's something I definitely think I've improved upon, and I'm gonna continue working on this when I can. Thank you everyone for all of your help. This has been such a great class, and I hope that your summers are so amazing. Cheers.